piano teacher. It doesn't really. Matter who you are as a piano teacher. You're generally going to be teaching people more in the beginner to intermediate stages, just because people drop off. A lot of beginners start and then just stop. A lot of people will kind of get to that grade 3 level, then they'll stop. So less people make it to the very end, which are the more advanced levels. So those are kind of more rare students. So I always have some of the early level books. I've talked about the RCM books a ton. I do really like them. They have a nice diverse range of pieces. So in the RCM books, everything is divided by grade, or that's wrong, by category. So list A, list B, list C, which is all based by era. So the list A stuff is going to be Baroque, list C stuff is going to be classical, and then list C is Romantic 20th, 21st century. It's a little bit different with the earlier grades, but that's the gist of it. They usually have a solid collection of pieces, and I have students who, some of my more hardcore students like to work through most of the pieces in one of these books at any particular grade level. Some are just kind of dabbling. Some are doing exams, so that's a bit. Oh, that's a big chunk of books, and that was a really loud, dramatic. And some of them I didn't mention also. Some of them are working on the etudes. I think that no matter who you are, if you're working with the RCM or not, I think the etudes books are really worth picking up. Etudes are just exercises, so they're studies. Essentially, and this is what I like about them. This book has 17 etudes, which is a lot. Like, you wouldn't work through all 17. I try to get through a lot of them with my students, like traditional students, but not learn all of them really well. Maybe learn, 5 of them very well. Most of them just kind of trying them out to expose them to new repertoire. But what I like about the etude books is it tells you exactly what you're studying. So with Burgmüller's Arabesque, you're leggero of touch, so a light and fast touch. With Lorna Patterson's Rush Hour. This is actually a really cool piece. Rhythmic control and hand coordination. So it tells you exactly the learning points of each of these etudes, so that you can focus on developing those techniques. So even if you're not working with the RCM series, these are really great books to develop. So with studies. Essentially, and this is what I like about them. This book has 17 etudes, which is a lot. Like, you wouldn't work through all 17. I try to get through a lot of them with my students, like traditional students, but not learn all of them really well. Maybe learn 5 of them very well. Most of them just kind of trying them out to expose them to new repertoire. But what I like about the etude books is it tells you exactly what you're studying. So with Burgmüller's Arabesque, you're leggero of touch, so a light and fast touch. With Lorna Patterson's Rush Hour. This is actually a really cool piece. Rhythmic control and hand coordination. So it tells you exactly the learning points of each of these etudes, so that you can focus on developing those techniques. So even if you're not working with the RCM series, these are really great books to use, because everything's at the same level. So as long as you have a kind of general sense of what level you're at, then I find they work really well. If you don't know what level you're at, pick up one of the easier ones, because it never hurts to learn some easy music. Pick up the grade 1 book. I have the Piano Adventures book. Actually, none of my students are in the first Piano Adventures book. There's a lot who are in the second, though, which is interesting. So this is one of my most well-known method book series. I also think there's an Alfred in here somewhere. Yep, there's Alfred book 1, which I use with a lot of students as well. These are what I would consider kind of 2 of the more common method book series. I think they're both good for different reasons. I do usually use Piano Adventures more now. I used to use Alfred more back in the day, so I kind of have a familiarity with it. But they're both good. Alfred's better for learning chords, but it's more hand position based, and Piano Adventures is maybe a little bit better of a gateway into classical music, but a lot of my students tend to use those regardless of whether or not I recommend them specifically. They just seem to be pretty common. Oh, I do have an ABRSN book on the pile. I don't know why the grade 2 one is, because I usually use the grade 3. I'm using the grade 3, 4, and 7 books currently right now too, so I don't know why they're not in the pile. But these are kind of like the RCM books, but they're smaller. So instead of having, I don't know, something like 20, probably the RCM books probably have like 20 pieces per book. These ones have 9 in every book, so they have 3 per category. Less selection, but they're really well curated, and as with the RCM, they're all kind of based on like everything's all at the same level. So the grade 2 books, all the pieces are going to be relatively the same difficulty, which is great if you're wanting to pick music that actually makes sense for you, if you don't want to have to just like constantly figure out what you're supposed to learn and if it's the right level. Oh, yeah, another series that I'm sure the first book is in this pile somewhere. I don't see it. That's unusual. Oh, there it is. Okay. Christopher Norton's Connections. I'm kind of bummed out because he seemed to be getting a little bit harder to find. Usually I buy everything on Sheet Music Plus, and yeah, these aren't currently available on Sheet Music Plus, so they must have been shifting publishers or something. These are such good books. They're graded, just like the RCM and the AVRSM books. So if you're using book 4, everything's going to be roughly at a grade 4 level, which is wonderful, because again, it takes out a lot of the guesswork. But the thing that I really like about these books is they're contemporary. So you have pieces that are, let me just see, like Latin pieces, you have character pieces, which are more like just kind of after the rain, or you know, pieces with expressive titles like that. There's swing, there's jazz, lyrical pieces would be kind of more romantic style. So it's basically great sounding music that's contemporary, which is a good alternative to ABRSM and RCM stuff, which is very, well, it has modern music too, but it does focus a little bit on the classical stuff, which is not everyone's cup of tea. That was the worst. That was the worst. Let's repeat another experience of creating an accent. Beethoven. Let's shift the subject here. So we're getting away from some of the methods. Beethoven's dances for the piano. There's a lot of great intermediate level dances. The ones that I tend to use the most are his 12 German dances, WO13, WO13, and his Ecosse in G, which is WO23. Those are pretty common too. There's another. I think those are the main sets that I tend to use, but this is a solid book if you're wanting to do Beethoven, but you're not able to play, his more difficult music like his bagatelles or his sonatas or his sonatinas, which are all pretty like advanced level. So good gateway Beethoven. Schumann, Album for the Young. I've talked about this a lot on the channel. This is basically grade 3 to 7 romantic music. It's, a lot of it's actually really, really difficult. Even the grade 3 level pieces are difficult for being grade 3, so, but it is good. Like this is one of the, I actually think, do I have Tchaikovsky's here? Yes, I do. Tchaikovsky has an equivalent album, which is Tchaikovsky's Album for the Young, exact same name, exact same difficulty. I'd actually say that Tchaikovsky's is a little easier. Not all the pieces are easier, but it starts a little bit easier than Schumann's, I think, so. But they both cover a lot of the same turf. They're romantic-ish. They've got a lot of really expressive pieces. So before you're able to really dig into Chopin and stuff like that, these are good collections that I like learning, at least several of with my students. I think these are great to just read through the whole thing. Again, not to master every single piece, but to just explore. Bach's 2 and 3-part inventions. These are more high level. These are grade 7, 8 level. So most of my students aren't. This is a really old book, by the way. This came from like my mom's piano music stash. Sorry, Mom, I just said it's a really old book and it came from your stash. I did not mean anything by that. My mom's not watching this one. This, I've talked about this a lot on the channel. Kabalevsky's Opus 39, 24 pieces for children. I teach it to adults pretty much exclusively. I almost never use this with kids, interestingly enough. But this is a really great book to work through. It starts at a preparatory level and quickly kind of advances through all the way to about a level 5 or a level 6. So I usually like working through about the first 10 to 15 pieces with people until they usually start getting a little bit more difficult. But this is one book that I would encourage my students. So if you're an intermediate student, I would work through even the beginning pieces. There's really good skills you can develop here. I use this with, I would say, at least half of my students. So that's probably one of the most important ones. Another book that I use with a lot of people, I pull out, this book is getting really battered. It's Essential Keyboard Repertoire Volume 1. This is basically a big collection of classical music. So if you don't want to, buy a bunch of books, like a Bach and a Mozart and everything else, this is just kind of an all-in-one thing. I don't usually like collection books, but I use this one a lot. It has Animated Bach, I use those pieces a lot. It's got some Berlit, which I sometimes use. There's Schumann for his preparatory to about a grade 5 level, so this is good, even if you're sort of in the starting phases, if you want to explore some more classical style repertoire. And another one I talk about all the time on this channel. Bartók's Mikrokosmos 1, again, probably more than half of my students are currently going through this or have gone through this. It's like a more old school style method book. It's so good. It's good for sight reading if you're pretty advanced. You can go through like 1, 2, 3. Like you can, if you're an advanced student, you could just read through a bunch of these. But yeah, I use Mikrokosmos all the time. Martha Myers, Jazz, Rags, and Blues. Solid. I recommend this to, I think this is in my grade 1 book collection roundup. A lot of my students use these. For the same reason as Christopher Norton, she writes music that beginners-ish can play, but sound really sophisticated. They sound much more snazzy than the level implies. I have Edward Grieg's lyric pieces. I use this one a lot personally, so that's one of the main reasons this one's out. It's complete, so it's like it's a big fat book of lyric pieces. Great for the late intermediate student. Bergmüller's 25 Etudes, Opus 100. I like, ideally, like the perfect student for me, the intermediate level student will go through all of these. These are great studies. It's like the RCM books, the Etude books, but instead of being everything at the same level, they're all kind of at different levels between about grade 3 to 7. But it's a book you can use for many years. Like if you learn a few of the Etudes every year as you progress, then eventually you get through the whole book. It's just great. I really prefer this honestly to a lot of the Czerny books I have for developing technique. Clementi's sonatinas, yes, especially his Opus 36 number 1. It's a very, very well loved. It's like the stairway to heaven of classical music. It's just everyone has to learn it. It's like a gateway. You're not a piano player until you've tried his Opus 36 number 1. All 3 movements I usually encourage my students to do. And then Chopin's waltzes, because almost all of my, no, that's not true. All of my more advanced students have or are thinking of doing his waltz in A minor. I've had a ton of students who've learned that piece. It's just a really famous, lovely, wonderful piece. It's one of the first Chopin pieces I tend to teach, so it's a grade 6 level. It's like entry Chopin, but it's quite difficult. There's a lot of nuance and stuff in it. But anyway, that's my pile. It is now, I've just been like throwing things to the side, so my pile is not contained. It's like a big mountain on the floor now. But yeah, those are my most used books in my studio. It's a good blend, like I said at the beginning, of stuff that's for beginners versus stuff that's for people more at the intermediate level. I think there's only 1 or 2 books. Like the Grieg lyric pieces and the Bach Inventions are probably the most advanced books in that pile. But for the most, I guess Chopin's waltzes are pretty difficult as well, except for that one particular one. But yeah, that's a lot of the music that I listen to on a weekly basis and that I love teaching. So hopefully you found this video maybe a little bit helpful. I'm always a little bit of a music book pusher, so maybe I'm like, pushing you to buy some new music books and improve your collection. And in that case, job well done. No, I don't know. I'm just like an obsessive music book collector. So anyway, that's my pile. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video. This is a heavy pile. This is a heavy pile of books.
Stopp. Hast du schon mal daran gedacht, mit Webseiten Geld zu verdienen? Wenn nicht, dann gehörst du wahrscheinlich auch nicht zu den 10.000 Affiliate-Marketern.
Today we're looking at 2 of the adult piano method giants, Alfred's Basic All-in-One and Adult Piano Adventures, a comprehensive piano course by Faber. These are both great method books for different reasons. These views are just my opinion, and hopefully they'll help in deciding which one is best for you. So first, let's talk about what they both deliver really well. They both give excellent introductions to the piano that include posture, hand position, and how the piano mechanics work. They also present basic foundational knowledge like note reading, rhythms, and dynamics in a very clear way. They also both include a helpful index in the back that include technique charts. So in the Alfred books, this includes scale fingering for the most common major and minor scales, as well as their chord cadences. The Faber book includes all of the major pentascales, which is the 5-finger pattern, so it's not the full scales. And it also includes cross-hand arpeggios. And lastly, they both attempt a well-rounded method that includes not only piano basics, but theory, technique, oral skills, sight reading, and improvisation. Now, what do they do differently? In general, the Alfred book looks, feels, and sounds a bit outdated. The musical knowledge doesn't really change, but the songs sound a little old. Faber looks fresher, and the songs, in my opinion, are just more interesting for a beginner student. There are two things that I don't love about the Alfred method. One, it's position-based. It introduces C position right away and sticks to it for so long. I know a lot of students really like this about the Alfred method, but the problem that I have with this position-based approach is that students begin to rely on seeing and feeling that position only. So if you move their hands out of C position, it's like they can't recognize any notes, and it adds a lot of confusion. And as we all know, the piano is way more than just the 10 notes in C position. Also, they don't introduce a new position until page 50, at least in my edition. After page 50, it moves to G position, F position, and then focuses on actual key signatures. Now, the Faber method book focuses on interval-based reading. So they introduce intervals almost right away. And right from the beginning, the student is all over the piano. Black keys, on white keys, and in many different positions. So some students might find this confusing at first, but it really helps develop the student's intervallic association, which can lead to better sight reading down the road. And it also avoids the C position dependency. Okay, moving on to the second thing that I don't love about the Alfred books. It focuses a lot on chords, too much in my opinion. Don't get me wrong, learning chords is necessary. However, because they focus so much on chords and so much on C position, the pieces and their textures begin to sound very similar. However, because they focus so much on chords and so much on C position, the pieces and their textures begin to sound very similar. They're basically melody with blocked chords. Now, depending on what your piano goals are, this might be the perfect way for you to learn. So if your intended genre is chord heavy, then this will be the route for you. But if you're more interested in classical music or have goals of becoming a really solid note reader and sight reader, you might want to stick more with the Faber books. Faber focuses more on texture and articulation, and this allows the repertoire to be more varied, and you can focus on flexing your musicianship skills. Now let's look at a couple things that I think the Alfred method does well that Faber doesn't do. First, Alfred includes an intro to the blues as well as several songs in the blues style, and I can see how that would be appealing to some people. They also introduce minor scales, which I think is not too difficult a concept and should be included in a comprehensive all-in-one piano method. They also introduce legato pedaling, which can really transform your playing, so that is definitely something that I wish the Faber method had. And lastly, while the online prices vary depending on where you buy, the Alfred book usually is sold at a slightly lower price than the Faber, by a few dollars. Overall, genre will depend on your method had. And lastly, while the online prices vary depending on where you buy, the Alfred book usually is sold at a slightly lower price than the Faber by a few dollars. Overall, I would say that if your piano goals include playing pop or other genres similar to that, and if you're a person who needs to feel successful at the beginning stages of learning in order to feel motivated to keep at it, the Alfred method is the best way to go. But if your goals are more classical and note-making based, then I would definitely go with a Faber. My preference is the Faber because of their varied repertoire and musical concepts, rather than just chords and hand positions. But I took a recent poll on a Facebook group of adult piano beginners, and roughly 73% preferred the Alfred method. So what do I know? But honestly, both are really great, and you'll learn all the basics that you need as a beginning pianist, especially when paired with an excellent private teacher who can give you feedback and keep you on track. I'll put a link down below where you can buy both of these books if you're interested. Before you take off, I wanted you to know that I'm offering a la carte piano coaching, so shoot me an email or a message if you'd like a session with me. You can choose from a 30, 45, or 60-minute Zoom lesson, and we can tackle whatever you're having trouble with together. And if these videos are helpful to you, it'd be really helpful for me if you hit that subscribe button.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Piano TV. So today I'm going to take you on a tour of my giant stack of favorite books at a grade 1 level or containing grade 1 songs of all different genres. The books are all different shapes and sizes because I'm very inclusive. So let's get going. So I would be remiss if I didn't first mention the Celebration Series RCM books. These are out of date because they just released a new series a few months ago and I haven't picked up new copies. So sue me. Whatever, that's okay. So these books are used a lot because they have a nice mix of pieces from all genres and categories. They have Baroque pieces, modern pieces, classical studies, etc. So the two that I use are the studies book, which is just like little finger exercises, but they're songs, and the repertoire book, which has like the bulk of the music. But my personal opinion is like I see the value in books like this because it's a no-brainer. Everything is at a grade 1 level. You don't have to play any guesswork. But the downside is they're not quite as valuable in like a long-term music collection because there's just, you use them for 1 year and then you basically just toss them aside and that's it. But some of these other collections I'm going to show you, they're themed, they span multiple grades, and I feel like they're a lot more timeless. But these are great if you don't really want to think about it, you just want to do a bunch of grade 1 level pieces, and that's that. Okay, so I'm going to show you my two favorites that I use over and over again with my students. So the first one is the Christopher Norton Connection series, level 1, because like the RCM ones, these are all at a grade 1 level, which makes it nice and simple. So the reason I like using this book is because a lot of kids are like, I don't like classical music or whatever. That's fine, I try to get them into it, but this is all written in pop styles. The songs are really approachable, they're really fun. They sound, a lot of them sound more difficult than they are, although don't be fooled, because lots of them actually are quite difficult. But you have all different styles of songs, so there's like lyrical, Latin.
Ну это все он себе так говорит, о себе так говорит. Да, ты тебе думаешь так. Ладно, там смотри. Так. Ладно.
Swing.
О, да. только да, наоборот. Ну это и есть на самом деле. Нет, понял, да. Наоборот. Вот наоборот, только но она, это он имел в виду. Там деньги выходят. Наоборот, да наоборот, ну наоборот, да на, вот это есть наоборот, да на, да наоборот, ну я напишу просто, потому что назвал просто, да нам это она имеет в виду. Да. Все пропустил уже, пропустишь еще. А,